One thing that happens on the chessboard, for example, is every move you make culminates in the position that you end up in, even if you don't know exactly where these moves will take you.
A real leader is gonna understand the power in every single move you make, having an effect on people that are not you. You understand? The role of a journalist is to tell the truth and find the truth and ask questions. But I think what we found is everybody has different truths. The truth doesn't need believers, it just needs to be told. You understand? So to me, that is the purpose of a journalist, especially right now.
You are one of many journalists that helped to bridge this divide in the Western world with the music that we grew up listening to already.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Talk about Kendrick Lamar's performance. That gives us an avenue to talk about all of the symbolism and everything in his performance that is connected to a broader socioeconomic conversation.
I've always said that music in particular, pop culture, entertainment, music is the greatest medium to communicate about broader issues that extend beyond pop culture. Oh my God, this is the first time I'm talking about this on a platform.
A game of chess is like a sword fight. You must think first, right? Before you move.
Playing each piece like losing it hurts.
This chess, it ain't checkers.
This is Ivie Ani, live and direct from New York City with Dometi Pongo on Chess, Not Checkers.
So I've always been fascinated by a phenomena that kind of give us metaphors for how we navigate life and move through the world, whether that comes from nature, the activities we do, or the games we play. Like this 1,000-year-old game we're about to play right now. I started off playing chess when I was in 3rd grade. And when I started my creative agency, Pongo Strategy Group, I committed to falling back in love with the game. And I'm like, what's the best way to do that other than talking to my brilliant friends about life, their life journeys, their strategies, and how they're navigating the world? You know, it's often said that chess can teach us a lot about life and strategy. So, you know, why not have a conversation about that? This is Chess, Not Checkers. And I guess this time around is one of the homies, one of my favorite journalists, Nigerian-American, Bronx native, big Bronx energy. You've seen her work in GQ, Revolt, BET, shows with me on MTV News. What else? OK Africa, rather.
Both.
Both OK Player and OK Africa. Vanity Fair.
Yes.
And, you know, she has a dual degree that she holds in journalism and Africana studies and is one of the go-to culture experts within our generation. Ivie Ani, man, thank you for pulling up.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I'm excited.
Yeah, so we already selected who's going to have what. You're white, I'm black. Do you remember how to set up the board? When's the last time you played chess?
Last time I played chess, I started playing chess in middle school.
Okay.
But the last time I played chess was virtually. I used to play chess games, you know, on the apps, like maybe like 10 years ago.
Okay, so it's been a minute.
Okay. It's been a minute.
It's
I
like
need a
riding
refresher.
a bike, though.
I know. I need a refresher, but it's coming back to me now.
All right, good, because everybody
remembering.
at home probably needs a little refresher, too. Start off with the front row with the pawns. Now, the pawns, it's funny how many metaphors this game has with classism, with life, with war. The pawns are your everyday people, your soldiers, your frontline soldiers. I like to say these were the poor people who were drafted in the war, so they can only go forward, they can't go back. And since you have white, you make the first move, sis.
Okay.
Who taught you how to play?
I don't remember learning how to play. I just remember playing. Honestly, there was a time when I think it was elementary school, maybe middle school. They had chess programs in my school in the Bronx, and depending on how you played, you would get to compete at higher levels, like across the city. I don't remember getting a chance to compete, but I remember we had some type of course or designated time for playing chess in school.
In school?
Yes.
See, I had something similar. I went to Beasley in Chicago, a magnet school, and we had a chess club, but the teacher in charge of watching the chess club didn't know how to play. So the only reason we joined the club was because we were unsupervised by somebody who couldn't really play. And then eventually they hired these grandmasters who kind of looked like Rick Rubin, like old Santa Claus looking ass dudes, who really learned and taught us how to play. We ended up traveling the country. Our team was called the Beasley Black Knights because we were like the only all-black chess team, like 3rd grade traveling around. And then I fell off. I'm kind of weak now, so you might actually win.
We both fell off.
All right, we'll
we
get right.
Get back up.
All right, well, Let's get this first move going.
Okay.
And then hit the clock. We got 15 minutes on the clock each. Before we get into some of the topics that I want to go over with you today, I want to get into you a little bit, because out of all of the times I've had you on different platforms, we've always talked about issues and whatnot, but we've never actually gotten to your story. At least I haven't.
Yeah.
We start off with the first move. What was the first role that you took in journalism after you graduated with your degrees in journalism and Africana studies?
Well, I'll say in media, because I actually got my first role in media before I graduated, because I was an intern at BET.
Okay.
That was my only internship, and that became my first job out of college, because they kind of bumped me up from an intern to a production assistant. So I wasn't writing professionally at a publication at that time. I was writing in school. I was doing reporting in school. But my first job was production assistant at BET, and I was working on the last era of 106 in Park, like the last couple episodes.
Literally.
Like, literally the last couple episodes I was working on. And that is how I got my start in on air, which was never the plan, ever. That was never the plan. I got my degree in print journalism. And then we studied, obviously, digital, because, you know, things had shifted at that time.
Where the world is going.
You know, so I was doing digital journalism. I got my degree in print journalism, Africana studies, which is like history, social, cultural analysis. And I vividly remember choosing not to take broadcast journalism because you were forced to take more courses. And I didn't want to take that many courses. And I just didn't want to be on air. I just wanted to write, you know. And then when I got to BET, the job that I had was booking talent and, you know, looking up talent to be on the show. And there was an episode around the time where there was just an influx of extrajudicial killings, you know, cops killing Black people in America at that time.
What year was this?
This was 2014 into 2015. And, you know, we were going to have a very politically charged episode. This was the episode with Barack Obama. So I was tasked with finding a criminal justice lawyer to come on the show and speak about one of the court cases, because I think one of the cops was exonerated. So I was tasked with booking a lawyer to come on. I had a criminal justice lawyer friend. I booked her to come on. I don't know what happened, but my producer asked me to speak instead. I don't know what happened. I was never planning to speak. I specifically booked someone I knew who was well-versed in that to speak. At the time, I was well-versed in that as well, because I was, I was protesting physically, and I was, in community with a lot of organizers and activists. So I knew what was going on, and I was staying abreast of all the cases and everything that was happening. So it just so happens I was equipped to speak, but I did not plan to.
So what did that teach you, being thrown in the fire like that?
To be ready.
And don't forget, you running your clock down.
I'm running my clock? Oh, my God. You know, it taught me to be prepared at all times. Are you going to copy my moves?
Clearly. Judging from how you talking, your moves are working. You got the right moves to copy.
Yeah, but it told me to be prepared.
To be prepared, because you never know what's going to happen.
And they put me on right after Barack Obama. So I'm like, this is my first entry point on air, and I'm talking about something that's important, and I'm contributing in my own way to the show in a way that I didn't expect, but I was prepared for it. But also, I think I was built for it, regardless. If I didn't choose that, my producer, shout out to Suzette Brown, I guess she just made the choice. I don't know what happened, but I think it happened for a reason, and that's how I got into On Air.
What is the role of the journalist in this era? And here's, as you think about it, here's why I ask. We've talked a lot about objectivity in journalism.
Yeah.
And I've always said, and when I do journalism classes, I teach that, there really isn't objectivity. There's objectivity in method. And there's objectivity in how we approach the facts, and honesty in presenting both sides of the equation. But every single human being is coming to a story with their human experiences. You don't let those experiences lead the story. But now we're in an era where it's all about takes. And you've got people in positions where companies have taken mainstream positions on certain issues. So speaking truth to power might mean going against the establishment that you work for, which which is something that a lot of folks have to navigate.
Yeah.
So I'm curious from your perspective, especially going from working at established media to being a freelancer, what is the role of journalism and journalists in this era where so much is happening?
I always said the role of a journalist is to tell the truth and find the truth and ask questions. But I think what we found is everybody has different truths. And everybody has a different way of finding the truth. And it's just funny to me how we're still having these conversations around objectivity, and how you define objectivity in itself is subjective.
Right.
So it's like, what are we really talking about?
That's a fact.
You know, everybody has a different definition of what objective means. I think on a human level, you're inherently biased depending on your background, your experiences. And I mean biased in the sense that we have different experiences that inform our lives, that inform how we view the world, that inform what type of questions we ask, that inform our methodology to finding the truth. You feel me? So objectivity is going to be something different to everyone, but obviously when you study journalism, they teach you the traditional route to reporting, interviewing, fact-checking, researching. The training in that, I think, is important on a baseline level, but the technique is something that I don't think is taught as much because our biases inform our technique. And I think that's the difference between what type of journalist you are.
I'm glad you said that too, because I found that what is considered to be the objective opinion tends to be from the perspective of the white male executive who's running the newsroom, right?
Yeah.
Like, it has become, it's still on you, by the way. I'm gonna let my clock run down on the next move. So
I don't even know what to do with this clock. I don't remember using a clock.
It's just to keep you ever play speed chess?
No.
With these folks, like, they put like 1 minute on the clock, blitz.
Oh yeah, I didn't reach that level. I didn't reach that level.
What's the role of a culture journalist in this space to you? What I love about the conversations that you've been able to have is, if we're looking at social media, and what happens a lot, I keep reminding you to move.
This game, man, this is a great game.
We just started. We're still in the opening game. Now, I don't need all of the chess experts talking about we did the opening wrong, you're supposed to do. We still learning.
I don't know what I'm doing.
I'm getting back in my bag.
Yeah.
I ain't played since.
Yeah, same.
You know, but we go figure it out. I'm gonna go here. I'll do. I think about how on social media, what drives conversation oftentimes, especially after, let's say, 2022, once the COVID died down and once everybody had gotten over, you know, the activist wave post George Floyd, right? And I say over in quotations.
Yeah.
There was a shift in the algorithm across Meta to prioritize dancing videos. And they called it like a push to suppress misinformation. And there was a lot of misinformation that was happening. But I also think that social media had gotten incredibly politicized, and it's becoming incredibly politicized again. But I felt like culture conversations gave us an interesting entry point to talk about deeper issues, right? Like if we talk about the Super Bowl that happened a couple of weeks ago, if we talk about Kendrick Lamar's performance, that gives us an avenue to talk about all of the symbolism and everything in his performance that is connected to a broader socioeconomic conversation. As a culture journalist, whether you're talking about an album that came out, whether you're talking about Beyonce's placement in the country music genre or the Grammy Awards, et cetera, how do you see your role as a culture journalist being able to, or even the rise of Afrobeats, like the story we did together for BET, how do you see your role as an extension of those conversations we talk about in hard news?
Well, you know, I've always said that music in particular, pop culture, entertainment, music, is the greatest medium to communicate about broader issues that extend beyond pop culture. I always said that from the beginning of my career. I said that that would be the lens that I approach music coverage from, or any type of coverage, because I didn't start out as a music journalist. I don't really care to pick and choose what to refer to myself as. You know, I don't shirk away when people call me a music journalist, even though I'm a culture journalist, because that's my degree is in social and cultural analysis. And when I started, I was covering, you know, more so politics and culture and pop culture on top of that. And then the music coverage, I think, just got more attention. You understand? So, you know, I'm a music journalist, I'm a culture journalist, but music is a part of culture. And they are just mediums to talk about bigger trends, bigger issues, more pervasive issues, and just the world around us. So I think the role of a journalist in that regard is to, or rather my role, is to use these mediums to communicate bigger ideas, to communicate bigger concepts, to communicate through an artist, an album, any type of cultural production, a film, a play. I think that has been my role. And it's almost like translating.
Yeah.
Because these fields or mediums might not be connected to a lay person, to an average person, but you can always find a through line.
Yes.
You can always find a through line through politics, music, film, what have you.
That's where I found myself.
Damn.
Damn. That ain't about nothing. I'm really trying to set something else up.
Oh, thanks for telling me.
Yeah. I'm warning you a little bit. Trying to set something else up. I see a weak point that I want to exploit. Let's see if you catch it. You know what I'm saying?
I need a second to scan this board.
There you go. Listen, I'm gonna do this so you can have more time. I'm gonna put our clocks a little more evenly.
Because I'm not even playing to win. I'm playing to play.
That's what this is about.
I love the game.
I love the game. I just love the game. If I leave the game, are they still gonna love me, B? You know, but wait, you said something interesting though about like those culture conversations being the entry point, and that was always my goal with my show on MTV, Need to Know. You know, we would take a pop culture topic and I give my take on it. But I'm gonna be honest with you, G, which is one of the reasons I started this web series after Need to Know was over with. The internet feels so loud. I don't always feel like I need to give my take.
Same.
Does everyone need my opinion on said issue? You know what I'm saying?
I agree with you. You know, I tweeted something a little while ago that went viral, and it was not my intention. I didn't know that it was going to take off, but that's virality for you. And I tweeted that we're definitely in late stage social media as a joke, but it's real. Have we seen all we've had to see as it pertains to social media? Have we gotten to this place where we've seen the best of the best and the worst of the worst and everything else in between when it comes to social media? We've seen every person's thoughts at all times on all things. We've been sold every product under the sun. Everything has been commodified and sold back to us. Our thoughts, our own tweets have been commodified and sold back to us. You know,
got a homie who got a tweet on a billboard. What? Continue.
I mean, but that's the point. As Gen Z, millennials, people on the cusp of that, we've seen pretty much, you know, the introduction of social media to this point of social media where people have built careers off of it, where mega corporations have capitalized off of it. We've seen it all. I don't know what else is left to see. So when it comes to being a cultural critic and a journalist, because those phrases and titles get confused and used interchangeably.
Yes.
But I know that I'm both because I have done both and I'm trained in both. But when it comes to being a cultural critic and a journalist, engaging with social media right now, I definitely have had a change of heart in how I use social media and how I view social media. Because I would say 5 or 6 years ago, I was using social media as a means to have conversations and generate conversations. Now I feel like we're in a conversation industrial complex where we're talking, and the pipeline is leading down to nothing but our thoughts being commodified, people arguing, people talking to just talk and not listen, people making arguments in bad faith,
people being more entrenched in their opinion just to say that I was right, I'm standing on business.
Uninformed opinions.
Rather than receiving new information and changing their opinion.
Uninformed opinions or opinions in a silo, or suppression from, you know, the corporate side of social media, as far as a Twitter being turned into X because of Elon Musk purchasing it and the proliferation of right-wing content being pushed on a platform. It's not the same type of social media we grew up with and navigated and used for work before. So what does it mean to generate a conversation online now? What does it mean to try to have a conversation online? It's very different. It's a different landscape. So to your point, where you feel like your opinion isn't necessarily needed at all times, I feel that way too, but I also feel like our opinions are very needed at times like this, but it's difficult for us to insert ourselves because of the landscape and because of the toll it takes from a professional and personal standpoint. Like, do you want to be a point of the conversation at this point? Like, do you really want to contribute to a debate on Twitter about
Is that rhetorical?
whether genocide is bad or not?
Right.
I don't know. No, I don't. Like, no.
That's the interesting thing about it, though, because you talked about transitioning from, you know, before we started, I asked, you know, how you feeling? You said, yo, I'm open now. Mm-hmm. Where you're more open to new opportunities, which I would say you seemed open from the beginning, starting as a print journalist and then transitioning to being a broadcast
you're right.
journalist. Yeah.
But there's this conversation that's happening now about how we have news influencers, because a good portion of people, I don't even know if it's just Gen Z or a younger generation, gets their news from social media. The problem with that is that these news influencers who are not journalists, who are not reporters, or who may be, run, you know, they're susceptible to being bought and sold, compromised by the entities that they do deals with. So the collateral damage to that is the news, the content that comes out. You understand? Yes. So it's like we see that more clearly when it comes to a political campaign, and you see news influencers pushing out information attached to a campaign. There's a really great podcast, Larry Wilmore, Black on the Air.
Shout out to Larry Wilmore, yeah.
One of his more recent episodes was about this. I think it was Black on the Air. If I'm not mistaken, it might be a different podcast, but shout out to Larry Wilmore in general, because he has these conversations all the time about the roles of journalists. He speaks to journalists from CNN to, you know, Fox, to different media entities. But I was listening to a podcast recently about how, you know, these news influencers have come into the fold as the purveyors of truth and news right now, but how detrimental that can be because of how that sort of business works. Yeah. Because an influencer gets paid to push product, but now the news is the product. What type of news is getting pushed?
Right.
And how much are they getting paid to push it?
That's about as ugly as what I'm about to do to you. All right, see, this, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call a fork. This is when you got a piece attacking two at the same time. So I got her queen in the crosshairs, got the rook in the crosshairs. The queen is out of that, B. I don't know if there's anything you could do to save your woman right now.
I wasn't paying attention, but
it's because you was making all these poignant points while I was over here scheming.
Damn, what do I do?
Oh no.
What do I even do?
Sound like Ice Spice, that Bronx accent covered up. What do I do? What do I even do?
Lately, everybody's been making fun of my accent. I'm like, what accent? I don't think I have a thick New York accent.
You definitely have a New York accent.
I know people who have super thick accents.
Has there been a point in your career where you had to make a decision between the better of two evils? And there's a situation that I'm actually thinking about, but I want to see what comes to your mind first.
The better of two evils.
Yeah, and that's what's always been interesting to me or between two good decisions as well. That's always been interesting to me between the game, because you know, you look at the consequences of if I take that piece or that piece, what'll be the outcome, and that happens a lot in our careers too.
Sometimes, I feel like I have to make those decisions with every decision, because I don't think people realize how much I get offered and how much I turn down. And if I had accepted everything I turned down, I would be way further. Financially, professionally, you know, but that would have compromised a lot of things that I did not want to compromise. So is that me choosing between the better of two evils, or just choosing the better option? You understand?
Yeah.
And I look back and I see what people get when they choose what would be considered the better option, but I don't think that is my portion. As Nigerians say, I will collect my portion, but that one is not for me. That one is not my portion. So I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm only going to do what I feel is right, but sometimes you don't know if you're right. You can only follow your moral compass, and I feel like that's what I have done. Has it been to my benefit? To me, yes. But I think on paper sometimes it could look otherwise, but I feel like I've done pretty good. So I've
Give me an
made
example.
I mean,
what
you can make so much money just compromising your integrity in this field. You can make so much money just promoting the show of someone you don't respect or their ideologies don't align with yours. Promoting a brand, a product that doesn't align with you or your politics or just anything. Like, There's so much money you can
Can I
make.
give you an example?
Sure.
I remember.
I could give examples too. I don't know if I want to go there. But.
If you could talk. You don't have to mention the brands. You could talk around them. So in 2016, I used to do a promotion with the radio station I was working at the time, WVON, while I took African Americans back home to Ghana to get to find out who they were and get back connected to the homeland, get their ancestry done, etc. So it's always been a passion point of mine. Fast forward a couple years, I ended up doing a show for VH1, Lineage to Legacy, where African Americans from Cast 11 Hip Hop found out what country they were from back home. Super dope show. During that time, I got hit with an opportunity to do a collaboration with one of those companies that research.
Like what, ancestry companies?
For example, yes, ancestry companies.
Okay.
And I said, man, I wonder how many diverse people, particularly black people or people of African descent, is on the board of this ancestry company. How interesting would it be if the descendants of slavers asked us to pay them to tell us where they took us from? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How fastidious is that? So I was looking it up. I said, let me see. And I thought they might have at least, one or two black faces on the... Gee, there was not one African-American or African on the board of this company.
Wow.
And they wanted me to do a campaign with them to encourage my people to find out where they from the same people that took us. I said, y'all lost y'all damn mind. It was already somewhat of a conflict because you got to be careful about, what commercials you do, but it fit. This wasn't connected to VH1. It was connected to another brand. I declined it and turned it down, and then I ended up, being cool with Gina Page from AfricanAncestry.com, et cetera. But it's just these moments where, sometimes even news entities or places, they just didn't see it. They didn't see it as like a glaring conflict of interest. You know what I'm saying?
At the end of the day, it's our job to make these decisions for our careers. Even though you could get to a point where you're represented by a talent agency, literary agent, TV agent, whatever, and then there's all these hands in the pot that are making these decisions for you or presenting opportunities to you and advising you on what you should take, what you shouldn't take. And they don't see those things that we can see. You understand? And I'm saying this from the perspective of not having representation. I have a literary agent, but on the talent end, I don't have representation. So I make every single decision. I'm not being advised on what I should take and what I shouldn't take. I'm making every single decision from the beginning of my career. And sometimes you lose out on a lot of money, but it's worth it. It's worth it because if you had accepted that, at what cost? At what cost?
I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror.
And
that was like the simplest example I could
Yeah,
give.
that's a simple example. I mean, a simple example I have is, there was a time when I was, I guess you call it like marketing consulting or media consulting, but it was also like promotional, doing campaigns, you do brand campaigns, whatever, but not necessarily for product, but for shows and, films or...
Get my night up out of there.
Wait, how do I do that?
Either you could do that, or you could do it with the night, with your night too.
Yes, I'll do that.
Yeah, because that way you can still cast it if you want to cast it at some point.
That's better.
And then hit your clock. There we go.
Well, every now and then you do brand campaigns or whatever, not necessarily for product. Like I just started doing traditional brand campaigns. I did a Jordan campaign this past year, but years ago I would do campaigns like for things that were aligned with me. Like here's a new show on Apple that is about history, whatever. But I got presented. It's your turn, right?
Yeah.
I got presented the opportunity to promote someone's show. And that person is diametrically opposed to everything I stand for. And they are very popular. And I got offered money that I really needed at the time. And I said no, because there was no way in hell I was going to promote this person's show. It didn't make any sense. And I knew that if I had said yes and I promoted this, how would my audience view me? But how would I view myself? Because a check is a check. It'll come. You can get it anywhere. A check will come. But in that moment, was I that popped that I would accept something that I'm diametrically opposed to? Someone who represents everything I don't stand for. And you spend all these years building trust with your audience. They're supposed to trust you, trust your voice, trust your brand, whatever that is, trust your your authenticity, trust your expertise. What would I have looked like promoting something or someone that I just don't agree with, am not aligned with? And I said no. And I just, I kept it a stack with them. I told them we're not aligned. It doesn't work.
Well, you take your trust seriously, and you take your audience seriously.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when people compromise, I don't think some of them know what their power is and don't care to misuse it.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we don't even know what our power is.
Yeah.
It comes from us knowing really, like literally, if I make this move, there are people who will follow me. Where am I leading them to?
Yes, where are you leading them? But a lot of times people are not leaders, so they don't care where they're leading people because they're not leaders. A real leader is going to understand the power in every single move you make having an effect on people that are not you. You understand? So, and this was years ago. I wasn't even in the position I'm in now. This was like a couple years ago. And I still had the foresight to do that because it wouldn't sit right with me. Like, it just wouldn't sit right with me,
You talked about power in every move you make, right? I'm gonna take it to the game real quick before we get back into the conversation. What is your thinking right now? What are your plans right now?
My head is not in the game.
It's not in the game. It's in the media. It's in this conversation.
It's not in the game, and I feel like I like to see things from a bird's eye view, literally. So to see it from this angle has an effect on how I'm playing.
You think you can tell something about people's personality by how they play the game, by how they play chess?
How they play any game.
How they play any game, right?
Mm-hmm. The first move they make, everything. But I feel like knowing someone's personality, you can kind of observe that and then guess how they would play a game or approach a game.
Okay. How do you approach life that mirrors how you approach games? And it's on you, by the way. That mirrors how you approach everything.
If I were to describe myself with one word, it would be curious. I think I might come off as closed off to a lot of people, but in reality, they might not know me that well because I'm extremely curious. I'm very open. And I think that's how I ended up in the industry I'm in or in the field that I'm in.
Can't do this without being curious.
Yes, you have to be curious. But I feel like that is the one thing about me that's still very childlike. Like, I want to know everything. And I have an interest in just finding out how things work and understanding. Even if I don't agree, I just want to know. I'm kind of nosy, Like, I just want the information. That's also a very Gemini quality. We want all the information so we could process it and translate it to people. So I'm just very interested in everything, the world around me.
I love it. One of the coolest gigs that you've done that surprised me randomly. I remember when Burna Boy a few years ago did that record-breaking performance, history-making performance at Madison Square Garden, sold out. And there's a voice that comes on that introduces Big Burna, the African giant. And it was your voice on that recording. How did that voiceover happen? How did you get contacted by Burna's team to do that? What was it like hearing your voice in that stadium? Talk to me, B.
Oh my God, this is the first time I'm talking about this on a platform. I don't think anybody's even asked me about this unless it was in person. But
for real?
Wow, that was legendary. I don't even think I sat with it at the time, but...
Was he the first African artist to sell out Madison Square Garden?
First Nigerian artist to headline, sell out Madison Square Garden.
First Nigerian or first African? I'm curious.
We could Google it. I think he might be both.
Might be damn Nigerian.
I know for a fact. I know for a fact he's the first Nigerian. But the fact that I don't even know the stats. Like, that's not... I just knew it was a first.
That's right.
You feel me? First Nigerian to headline at Madison Square Garden, one of the biggest stages in the world. In New York City, as a Nigerian from New York City. What else could you do after this? You understand? Like, what else could you do? Madison Square Garden. I don't understand how to describe that other than the stars being aligned for that to happen. How could we have guessed that Afrobeats would get to this point where an artist from the genre would be headlining at Madison Square Garden? How could we get to this point where a Nigerian girl from the Bronx would be opening the show for that? It's like a storybook, you understand? The way that it happened was via another Nigerian from New York. Shout out to Prince Ade, my very good friend Prince Ade. He's like a creative director, designer, photographer, director, and he's really tapped into music. He's an executive he executive produces music. He has a very extensive resume. He's a good friend of mine. He was very close with Burna's team. I was cool with Burna's team as well because I had done stuff with them in the past, but more so editorially trying to place them This was a time when outlets weren't putting African artists on the covers, and I was trying to push to get like Burna on the cover of a few things. So I knew, I had interacted with them, I knew them already, but Ade had a closer relationship, and he conceptualized the idea for the introduction of the show. This was very last minute. I don't think people realize how last minute this was.
Was this like day before?
I would say like a week.
A week, okay.
I would say like a week. They just hit me like, I have an idea, and I recorded that in my house.
Okay. Can you give us the voice? What was the script? Did you write the script?
No, Ade wrote the script.
Okay, fire.
Ade wrote the
Shout out to
script.
Ade.
Ronami approved it. Shout out to Ronami. He had the designs made, the graphics made, and he had this idea of taking Burna Boy's spaceship theme and having the spaceship land in New York City ahead of the show. And I'm the co-captain. Burna's the captain. So that was the storyline. And I immediately said yes.
Of course.
Because my friend hit me, I'm going to do it for my friend, but also I'm just like, it's making sense. The points are making sense, you know what I mean? But again, I wasn't thinking about how big it would be because I didn't know how they were going to integrate it into the show. For all I know, it could have been like a transition or interlude or something, whatever.
You ain't know it was going to be the introduction.
I didn't realize, but he gave me the script and he asked me to do a Nigerian accent, a British accent, and then my regular accent, which I guess is the New York accent. I wanted to do my regular accent because I felt like we're landing in New York,
right?
Whatever. But conceptually, I'm like, it doesn't make sense to have a New York accent if I'm coming from somewhere else to New York.
Got to be British.
Yeah, so they're like,
or
okay.
African, but I feel like we associate like the British accent with like a Siri AI type voice.
Yeah, and colonialism, but
that too.
I also did a Nigerian accent mixed with British because a lot of Nigerians also have like a British Nigerian accent, especially the older they are. So I did that too. But my first take is what he used. Mind you, I thought I was feeling it because I had just flown in from London and Top Boy had just came out.
Not you swore you was the
I
man
really thought I was the man them like on road.
Americans watch one Top Boy episode and all of a sudden, where's the food?
Yeah, where's the food, bro? So I'm coming
I need
back.
my peas.
I had just flown in from London and I had just watched Top Boy. So he asked me to do a British accent. I said, say less. Did a British accent, but I don't think it was very good. I don't think it was a great British accent.
I thought the accent was trash. I heard it in the stadium though. It worked.
It worked.
I couldn't tell.
It worked. It worked. So
what
I
was
did
it?
that.
Let me hear your what did you say? What was the script? What did you say?
Let me see if I remember it. I said, I don't even remember. Wait, I don't remember the script. It's like something in New York City. The engine chambers are damaged, but they can be fixed. I don't even remember. I just remember it's like, oh, we had a rough landing in New York City. The engine chambers are damaged, but they can be fixed. And then Burna says something, and I go, that makes one of us. And I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember.
You took me there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna add reverb to that post. We're gonna make
it. Fake British accent, but I guess he just wanted something that sounded posh.
And then while you're saying this, you see stars and the whole. I remember the screen. Wasn't it something on the screen?
I've recorded this in my closet in my home office, like on my phone, and I sent
on a cell
him.
phone. You didn't even use a real mic.
And I have a real mic.
I want to go back to the game. So, reason I asked this question, you said, how could we know that a Nigerian artist will come to New York all these years later, will be on the cover of magazines, would be at Coachella, all these different things. But we did kind of know, because one thing that happens on the chessboard, for example, is every move you make culminates in the position that you end up in, even if you don't know exactly where these moves will take you. And you built these relationships with Ade, with Burna Boy, with all of these folks throughout your career, just by naturally doing what makes sense. And by doing what made sense to you, those moves culminated in you were one of many journalists that helped to bridge this divide in the Western world with the music that we grew up listening to already.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You're so right.
It set the stage for it.
I think sometimes I have a habit of kind of removing myself from the story or from whatever, because as a journalist, you're not supposed to be in it. But this is what I mean earlier today when I said I'm more open than ever, because I used to be way more traditional in that I would not break certain rules that, you're taught in journalism school. But is it really breaking? Because who created these rules? And if we're trying to survive in an industry that is actively making sure that we do not survive as reporters, as journalists, as people who are trained to do this job, who cannot get jobs in the industry, who cannot keep a job in this industry, how are you to survive in this media landscape? You understand? What can you use at your disposal? What tools do you have to continue having a career? We are the ones who are maintaining and building these relationships. We are the ones who are bridging the gaps between all of these industries and fields and cultural productions. We are the ones who are translating and making these things digestible. We are the ones that are documenting these things. We are the ones who are doing the labor that these media companies need to make money. So why can't I do a voiceover at MSG and be in the story? You know what I mean? Like, why can't I be in the story now? And it was against my will to be in the story until I made the decision to just say, yes, I'm in it now. I can't pretend like I'm not in it. I can't pretend like if I'm writing about Afrobeats, again, that I cannot mention the fact that I was a part of a historic moment. I can't not mention it anymore. It would be disingenuous. The truth is, I'm in it, you know? And, you know, it's not a meteoric thing. It's very piecemeal. Like, all these moments happened for this to come to be. And that's how that MSG thing came to be. And I was on my way there. And when I got there, people were telling me, like, certain people knew it was me, even though I had an accent. They were just like, I could tell by the tone of the voice that it was you. So people were congratulating me, and I didn't know people would be able to recognize, you know, but that was that. It was surreal. It was very surreal.
Ivie, it's your move. I'd be remiss if I had you on and I didn't ask this question as you make this move. Just 2 more questions, because the game's going to be over soon. The game going to be over soon, real soon. Hit the clock. Do you think that artists today, at the beginning of this conversation, you talked about music being one of the main mediums, especially in culture, that is able to lead us to broader conversations about the world around us. Do you think that artists today are meeting that? Like, I remember Nina Simone, the quote that everyone always mentions is the
job of the artist is to reflect the times.
Do you think artists are meeting that need today?
Most people would say no, artists are not meeting this moment and reflecting the times. But I would say yes, because look at the time period we're in. Fascism is in full force. We have a heavy consumer culture, even though everybody's broke, and we're arguably maybe might be in a recession. If we're not in a recession, it feels like a recession to a lot of people. Yet we're still seeing this hyper-capitalist, hyper-consumer-focused moment where everything is commodified and everybody feels like they need to buy things but can't afford things. Our food production is tampered with in the U.S. There's multiple wars happening, multiple humanity crises happening from Congo to Sudan to Gaza to Tigray. And we have to go on about our days like nothing's happening. Are artists reflecting that? Yes, because they're just going about their careers like nothing's happening. That's the time we're in. What is the time that we're in? Is there a mass revolution happening that I'm missing?
Right. They're reflecting the consumerism, the consumption.
Yes, they're reflecting what's happening. You know, there's people who are actively politically involved and organizing. They have always been organizing because there have always been crises around the world.
Yeah.
So what about this time are artists not reflecting? Because we don't have a mass revolution in which we should expect, or rather we would expect artists to kind of reflect. Is there a revolution right now for them to reflect and put into the music? Or does reflecting the times mean they should speak about all the issues that are happening around us? That, I think, is the argument that makes people say they're not reflecting the times, and I understand that. The last article I wrote that was in print was for In These Times magazine, and it was about protest music, what happened to protest music, the lack thereof right now. And the only kind of protest music that we've heard attached to some of the issues happening now, particularly the war on Gaza, those songs have not made any waves in the way protest music traditionally has, you know, from the Marvin Gaye era, what's going on, you know, or different eras in which there were, you know, very tragic things happening in the world. We don't have a protest song that really encapsulates the moment. So when people say artists are not reflecting the time, I think they're referring to that. But sometimes when I think about it, it makes me kind of reckon with this idea that we're living in a time where we're just passively, almost like zombie-like. Like we just have to do what we have to do to survive. Some would argue that we always have, but we're just living in a time where it feels to some people like they don't have a choice to do anything but try to keep working so they can pay their bills and stay afloat. We're living in a time where artists feel like they can't really do anything to go against their labels or to stop their underlying bag. I don't know. But people don't want to compromise much to make that move. But if there's no revolution, what are artists reflecting?
Here's one last question. I'm enjoying this conversation, by the way.
I'm not enjoying this game. I bet you enjoying it.
I'm having a great time. This is a fantastic game. It's wonderful. I wanted to ask this because, the Super Bowl happened and a lot of people have been breaking down Kendrick Lamar's performance and all the symbolism. I don't want to go down that route because most of those takes have happened. But in this conversation about an artist who meets the time, if people ask who that mainstream rapper would be, a lot of folks would say Kendrick.
Yeah.
How do you feel his Super Bowl performance met the time? Was the Uncle Sam, when he's with Samuel Jackson, opening it up and talking about playing the game, and then, you guys can look up all of the meanings. I'm not gonna go all through them. I've got some things that I saw as well. I'm sure somebody saw them as well on the internet somewhere. But I do remember this one thing when Kendrick said the revolution's about to be televised, and I was waiting for it to happen. I enjoyed the performance, but he made a promise that he never lived up to as far as that quote goes. How do you feel that matched up with the promise of him saying that I'm going against the system?
He's reflecting the times.
What would you say that was?
Loaded symbolism being sponsored by a mega corporate entity.
On a stage that marginalized the football player, which is the reason that Jay-Z is even part of this.
In front of world leaders. The president was there. I think he reflected the times in many ways. I think he reflected the criticisms people have of the times and the positive things people have of this moment. Removing my political views from it and his political views from it, I thought it was an excellent performance. I thought it was excellent. I think from an artistic level, I thought it was excellent. I know if the theater kids are watching, they would probably think it's excellent too. Production level, him as an entertainer, excellent. I was very impressed by him in that regard. Facial expressions, intonation, the mic was on, like
the breath control.
Not even as a rapper, as any type of artist. Not a lot of people are performing at that level. Do you understand? So I thought it was excellent in that regard. I thought it was entertaining. And I thought he did exactly what is accepted, and that is making a spectacle.
You say he played the game.
Yes.
Even as
and the theme was a game. He played the game, but I think his, sort of conception of playing the game was breaking the rules, and I think his intention was to break rules. I do think he did not do a traditional halftime performance. He didn't make a lot of safe choices as far as the Super Bowl stage goes. He didn't make safe choices. His song choices were not safe. He did mostly GNX. He didn't do, all of the hits that people would have expected.
He didn't do Loyalty. He didn't do Money Tree, Swimming
He
Pool.
did hits. He has hits, and he did them, but it was heavily GNX focused because it was about the storytelling.
I was surprised he did All the Stars. I thought that there was a message in that because he chose the song that was on the Wakanda soundtrack.
Yeah.
But that was a lull moment for me. I think what he did that was pivotal and that I wish was paid a little more attention to was what he did for rap.
Yes.
He did a rap show.
Yeah.
I'm going to do B-sides, I'm going to rap, and then he got doo-wop, but beatboxing at the same time, showing that bridge between the doo-wop era and vocalizing to having dudes on the corner. I love that.
Loved it.
What I didn't love, though, was within that song selection, when you actually, and a lot of people are saying he did an unreleased song in the beginning. It was unreleased, but it was actually the commercial for the GNX album. That's where that verse came from. So there was like a 1-minute video for the GNX album that Kendrick Lamar did, and he was sitting on top of a GNX. And then this time he did that same verse. But when you listen to the lyrics of that verse, he mentions government and he says, a couple of things that are potent. And I love Man at the Garden as a self-affirmation
I love that song.
type of song. I love it too. But I wasn't sure that the lyrics, as dense as they were, with the exception of a song like DNA, were as compatible with what a song like All Right could have done.
Yeah, but he did it at the Super Bowl with Dre. He did All Right.
He did All Right. So he shouldn't have done. Doing it again would have been redundant.
It would have been nice, I think, for this moment. I think people wanted to hear that sort of record since sort of became a protest record in its own right, even if it wasn't intended to be one. I remember it coming up in protests a lot back then. So people kind of wanted to hear it because they wanted to feel something that made them feel the way they felt when that came out. But I think he made certain stylistic choices in his set list that were brave because they were not standard, what would have worked for that crowd. But what you said about him sort of doing this for rap, I fully agree with, because I thought it was an excellent rap performance.
Yes.
I thought it was an excellent performance, genre aside. But I think he just showed how expansive and poignant rap is.
Yes.
And I feel like people were losing that feeling, especially when it comes to performance art.
Yes.
So he just...
And bringing actual lyricism and word-heavy, wordsmith-ish to a stage that large to show that this still has value. And a lot of people say he was focusing on Drake. I think he was using Drake as a proxy for this consumerism conversation. Even though with his Gemini contradictoriness, you know, we contradict ourselves every now and then.
We have balance.
We have balance. Let's call it balance.
We're layered, dimensional,
duality,
if you will.
Like that. You know, I think even as he was a participant in this consumerism that you talk about, Drake, as far as Kendrick is concerned, is the personification of that, of mainstream music, of song making, of appealing to the masses, and doing something that is microwavable, while Kendrick is saying, I'm doing something that's going to be timeless, even if everybody else doesn't get it. It's going to be hip hop.
Some people would say Drake is the catalyst to Kendrick's resurgence on the scene as far as this amount of time and energy and effort he's been putting into music and this rollout. But to me, at this point, Drake is a footnote in this story. It started with him, but it's really bigger than him. And I don't think he was the focus of the Super Bowl. But I will say, I was in a bar downtown watching the show, and the way the crowd reacted when he said, "Say Drake," when I tell you, I was so shocked that he said his name. I thought he was gonna, edit out his name or just, take a liberty to change the lyrics around, because he really did change a lot of lyrics.
He did.
And I think he should get a lot more credit for the last minute changes and remembering
the lyrics
and censoring himself with cursing.
On DNA, he jumped from like 4 bars to another line that was several bars in the same verse and mixed it together. Muscle memory is different. You've been forming the song for years and you're switching those lyrics. Yes.
I don't know if we're noticing that as talent, like when you have to memorize a script or read from a teleprompter, or you just do things and you have a rote routine. But for him to change these lyrics last minute and make it digestible for this platform, I think that was such a huge feat that was very difficult to do. And he was not on using a vocal backtrack. The mic was on. I was like very impressed by that. But I did not expect him to say Drake's name. At that moment, oh my God.
Say Drake.
Say Drake. But it was the smile, the devious smile at the camera. He's such a thespian to me. Like, he's so theatrical. That's what I love about him. He's so animated. And I've been a Kendrick Lamar fan for a long time. I fell off for a little bit.
Mr. Morale era? Is that when you fell off?
Right before that. The Be Humble era.
Okay.
I hate that song. But I was a Kendrick Lamar fan since high school. And this comeback, inspirational in a lot of ways, but I think he is the premier artist of the moment because there's so much criticism that can be levied against him, but it's warranted because he's making art that's worth criticizing.
That's a bar.
Not a lot of things I want to comment on.
Before we get out of here, I want you to make one more move. I'll make one last one. We're not going to get to checkmate, but I think we know where this is going. I want to end on this note. That's a good move, baby. That's cold. That's good. Good stuff. Good stuff. Check.
All right. Anyway.
That's almost mate. Not quite.
Wait, hold on.
Nah, because you can block with the knight or the bishop.
I didn't even know you took my queen.
You forgot how that happened years ago.
Like, what? Okay.
But you have another engagement. We'll pick up another game. When you come back.
I want to play for real. Like, I want to get back in the game.
You know what we'll do next time? I'll do one speed game where we just play.
Yeah.
And then we'll do another one where we play and talk.
Yeah, I want to play. I need to get back in the game.
Okay. Well, listen, this is all about this being chess, not checkers, meaning this is about strategy, not just trying to get all of the pieces off the board.
Yes.
What has been Ivie Ani's strategy for success that has worked for you? What is a through line that you've done strategically that has been a winner throughout your movement in your career?
I think it's always rooted in intention and integrity. Everything I do, it has to be intentional and it has to be guided by integrity. I really am calculated with a lot of things, not just my career. I feel like I've always had to balance being open and being calculated. And I feel like my mind only operates in those two ways. Like I'm super open and that's what helps me learn things. But on the other hand, I can be hypercritical, but not myopic. Just hypercritical because I'm just trying to make the right decision and I'm trying to map something out. So I'm just very strategic in that way. But sometimes, and a lot of the times, I just feel like I go with the flow, but it's always leading me somewhere because of maybe the intention I put in 10 years ago. I feel like I will never lead myself astray, even if I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing. I feel like I'll never be knocked off of my path, even if I don't know what's coming next or where I'm going. You understand? And in this time period, I know where I'm going and what I want to do, but I don't know how this year is going to look professionally. I have no idea, but I know that everything I've done up until this point will result in this year just being another step towards where I need to be. I have no qualms. I have no concerns. I have no worries about myself professionally, no matter what happens, because of all the work that I put in and all the moves that I made years ago. I have no worries, no matter what happens.
What happens when you move with integrity and intention? Ivie Ani. It's Chess Not Checkers. I'm Dometi Pongo. We'll have you back. We got a lot of stuff I didn't even get to talk about.
Yes,
Thank you for
I'll
being
come
here.
back. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for the wisdom. Thank you for being open and not so calculated on this board. I appreciate it. I needed a win. Man, shout out to Need to Know Studios, man. You had a good time here?
I did, and this is one of the best setups I've been to in a very long time as far as lighting and just how everything is set up. It's top tier. It's really top tier. Like, I might have to steal this.
By all means.
They know what they're doing.
Please do. My people need to get paid, and I don't pay much, so. So please.
Oh, so how you pronounce my name? Anybody who calls me Ivie, Evie, no. Even Ivie, no. This is how you say it. Ivie.
Ivie.
And I'm not being extra. That's how you say it.
That's how you say it.
It's an Edo name. My mother's from Edo State, that part of Nigeria. She's Ishan. I'm half Igbo, half Ishan. Ishan and Edo is closely related. That's why I have an Edo name, and I'm from that region. So the intonation in it is almost like, it would be 2 syllables technically, but it's almost like 1.5 syllables because the emphasis is on the vie, not the e in the beginning. I is pronounced like an e and the e is pronounced like an a. So that's why it's vie. But I've noticed that it's very hard for people to do that inflection, but I think you might just need to speak that language or,
And it's even harder when it's surrounded by other English words.
Yeah.
Because I Americanized my name, but mine is Dometi.
That's how I pronounce your name, though.
Yeah, of course you do.
When people pronounce it right, that's how I'll be like.
It feels
it's
strong.
like my mom is calling me.
That's how I feel when people say Dometi. I mean, if my assistant calls me and I ain't been answering my phone, she's like, Dometi. I'm like, oh, you sound like my mom or my big sister. So
I'll always be responsive when people pronounce my name. But other Nigerians can't really pronounce it because
different tribes,
different languages.
Well, I mean, you can't lose when you talk about moving with integrity and intention, and that's why you've been able to traverse this landscape the way you have. Ivie, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Man, say your name one more time. Do your own outro.
This is Ivie Ani, live and direct from New York City with Dometi Pongo on Chess Not Checkers.